Hi. Um, I was just sat down, thinking about nothing much at all, actually. Um, and then I went onto my computer and I saw a video that a friend of mine did, Rebecca, talking about her life, about her story. So I thought I would do one as well, and I can keep it and put it on YouTube, and hopefully people will sort of come to see it and sort of learn from it. So I guess I'll start at the beginning, where every story starts. Um, when I can go back to remembering when I was about 9 years old. Um, that I lived in a place called Rafton, near Braunton. And I lived in a cottage. It was a beautiful cottage. And it was two cottages it was built on. Next door was my grandmother and my grandfather, and we had lots and lots of room. We had acres of room. It was like a big fields that were gardens, and then there was a lot more thatched cottages opposite and down the road. It was built. The whole village was made up of thatched cottages back then. So anyway, I can sort of go back to remembering that I had this urge to put on my sister's dresses. Not when they were there, of course. One day they went out into Braunton, which is only 5 miles away, to do some shopping. And my sister, being older than me, she went with her mum. But back then, you didn't worry. Families didn't worry about leaving their children, because I had my grandmother next door anyway, and our place had a gate. But it was back in the days when you didn't have to worry about it. I mean, we as kids used to go out all day, and my mum would never worry because we'd be home by tea time. So it didn't really come into it. And like I say, my grandmother lived next door anyway, so that was the main thing. Um, and then one day, I remember going up into the bedroom, and into my sister's room, and there was her dress on the bed, and I thought, I didn't even think actually. I tried it on, and it felt really good. It really did. It was a funny feeling actually. It was a sort of scared feeling, because I was wondering if my grandma was going to come into the house, but she didn't. So I tried on this. I tried on the dress, and I just walked around the bedroom. Um, I didn't do it for long, if I can remember. I took it off, but after that, it was a lovely feeling that I got from it. I didn't know why. I couldn't understand why I got this nice feeling. I guess I could have been thinking, oh, I'm playing. I don't know. Going back so long, I can't really remember what did go through my mind. I know I remember doing it, and and I can remember it giving me a nice feeling. So after that, it wasn't very often, but when my mum would go out, I would stay home with my gran, and then I'd go indoors and I'd try a skirt on. Same again, walking out around the bedroom, and one day I put her dress on, and I come out the house, and I sneaked out the back way. I looked to see if there was anyone about, and there wasn't. So I went round around the corner, because we used to have a big barn, and behind the barn was the gardens and that. My grandfather was out because he was thatching for the day, so he'd gone out. So it was only my grandmother at home, and she was cooking, because I'd seen her in the morning, and she was starting to do some cooking and some other things that she did in the front room. And she didn't get out much anyway because she had a bad leg, so she said sort of more housebound than anything else. When I was about that age anyway. So I sort of sneaked out the house and I went round the corner, down round by the garden, and we used to have some pigsties around there because it was all part of the cottages. Back then, you had pigsties and chicken houses and stuff like that. That was quite a big place. And then all I did was walk round part of the garden, and I came back up. As I come round beside the barn towards the bungalow, the cottage, there was grandfather coming down round the corner, and he caught me. And he said, "What you doing?" He said, "You all right?" I said, "Yeah." I remember him saying that. And he only said was, "Oh, you playing?" I said, "Yeah." And he could see me in my sister's dress. So with that, I went on. He never said a word, you know. He wasn't stupid. He couldn't have been stupid. He wasn't stupid. He must have thought perhaps he was playing or whatever. But then it went on for a little while like that, and then eventually we moved out of the cottages because they were pulled down, so we had to move into a place called Braunton. And we were in like a masonette. My mum hated it because she missed her cottage, and we all did actually. I used to live in this masonette, and as I grew older, I used to go and buy some clothes from jumble sales, and used to bring them home with my pocket money, and hide them away, and hide it away, and then I'd sneak out at night down the steps, across the river. There's a nice little river that ran beside the masonettes, and it was beyond that was fields. So I used to go out, I used to dress and sneak out at night and walk around the fields. And it's this feeling I got. By then, the feelings has got very strong. Were very, very strong. And it's a thing that I couldn't really stop doing. It went, not all the time, but it was a lot of time I did it. Off and on, sort of thing. And then it sort of eased off a bit. But then when I left school, and I was earning, I started a job, so I had money, and I was buying little bits and pieces, not a lot, just a bit, some clothes, and hiding it away. Because by then my sister had married, so she was living away from home anyway. So I was the only one in the house, apart from Mum. And I used to go out of a night time and go across the stepping stones, across the river, to the other side of the riverbank, and then go down into the fields, walk around the fields. And that's all I did, was walk around the fields. Then I'd come back, sneak upstairs, take it all off. That was it. And I'd done that for several years, actually, while I was at school and when I was working. And in between that, I did, I tried to get away from it. I had a motorbike. I joined in with the lads in the village, did everything that lads do. And you do. You try and, I think in your own, without even thinking about it, you try and suppress it. But as I got older, and then I started seeing girls, which was great. I loved the company of girls. I loved it. But I would get into a situation where, you have a cuddle and a kiss. But as a teenager, when it got down to to making love, I knew that it wouldn't work, because that down below has never worked properly. I went to see the doctors and they couldn't work it out what the problem was. But now I can look back and I know exactly what it was. It was that it didn't work because I felt it shouldn't have been there. But I didn't want to accept that. I didn't want to accept that. It worked up to a point. And we won't go into that anyway, because we all know what it means. And then I married a beautiful girl called Mary Ann. That was my first wife. we got married, and I suppressed it as much as I could. But we never got to consummate the marriage because it didn't work. So the wedding was annulled. I still see her now, Marianne, and she's fantastic. You know, we're really good friends now. And then I went on. I just drudged on, and I took my HGV and became a lorry driver, and that was great because I could go away from home and dress in the truck, pull into a lay-by, and just sit in the truck, dressed, and it was great. So I could live this double life, and it was great. Back home, I would go out with the lads, and just act as normal. I never told them. I wouldn't tell nobody. You didn't. You don't tell nobody. You don't tell them it'll be your secret like that. And then as time went on, I become door staff, or bouncer, if you want to call it. That took me away from it as well. And it was trying these things to get away from it. And it worked up to a point, and then it would come back. It would come back, and it would sneak back. Next thing I know, I'm dressing again. And that went on for years like that. It just went on and on and on. I even went to for help with a lady in Bideford, Sally Openshaw. And I talked to her. I had about 8 or 9 sessions with her. And she actually, at the end of the sessions, she'd sussed it out what the problem was. But I didn't want to accept it. I wanted to turn it away. I wanted to suppress it. And that just went on and on. And then I'm married for the second time. I had a son, Jody. But being on long distance lorry driving, I could do that away from home. And I did that for several years. It's something you can't turn off. You can't turn it off, no matter what people say. And it doesn't. You don't just wake up in the morning and say, "Oh, I want to be," I fancy being a woman. It's not like that. It's not like that at all. But back in the early days, there was no information. There was no, in a way, there was no one you could go to. I guess there was, but I didn't know. I just come down to the fact that there was something wrong with me. I was a weirdo. I was sick in the head. I even told myself that I was strange, and at times it made me feel sick. I think because I was holding it back, and it just puts you through that. But as time went on, I suppressed it. It came back. Suppressed it. It came back. It came back. And I went through all that. You can't fight it. No matter what you do, you cannot fight it. You can't fight these feelings, as the song goes. That marriage ended, and then I went on. I met somebody else, Lynn. And it sort of settled down a bit. I suppressed it. And then it got to the point where I thought, if I come away from long distance lorry driving, then I won't be able to dress. And that would be great. I'll suppress it that way. All the time I'm trying to suppress this, but it won't let me. It just won't let me. So I came away from long distance lorry driving. And it was great for a while. With the sex side of it, I bluffed my way through life. And I always have done. Even up to the end when me and Lynn divorced. There was never no real sex. Because that's never worked. It's not just going to work for the sake of it. I mean, I went to the doctors. I went to Sally Openshaw. She tried to help me. The doctor tried to help me. She even gave me Viagra. Or he did. But that was about as useful as, it just didn't work. I might as well have used the Viagra to put behind the door to stop the door opening as a contraceptive more than anything else. So that didn't work. So I just drudged on over the years, and then I came off of long distance lorry driving, and I thought, well, perhaps this will help. But it didn't, because it came back again. And it always does come back. No matter how much you suppress it, it will come back. It's called gender dysphoria. And you can't stop it. It's in us. It's born in us. It's from birth. So she used to come home and catch me sometimes dressed, and then we'd have a row, and I'd feel so dirty. I went through all these emotions, and you really do. You start doubting yourself and calling yourself names. You can call yourself whatever you want, but it still comes out the same, and you can't suppress it. So I went through most of my adult years this way, being somebody I wasn't, pretending to be somebody that I wasn't. The biker, the bouncer, the doorman, whatever you want to call him. It was just to suppress what I really was. It's like a lot of the guys and girls, they go into the army, they try and suppress it that way. But it doesn't work. It will never work. It's just delaying it. It delays the outcome. And to be quite honest, there isn't many outcomes it can come to. Not really. But then you've got different types of girls and boys that go through this. Some of the girls, they'll dress at the weekend, and they enjoy that, and that's their relief. They're happy with that, and that's great for them. The cross-dressed girls, they'll come along like once a month, and they'll dress up and come to like a place that I go to, Safe Haven, Sugar and Spice, where they can dress all weekend and be who they want to be all weekend. And a lot of them come with their partners or their wives, their family, and they accept it. But some of the girls, they don't want to go. They don't want to go into transition. That's up to them. That's great. If they can deal with that. Because everyone deals with it in a different way. But for the likes of myself and other trans girls that can't stop these feelings to be female. So we go that bit further, and then we go into transition. And this is what I did. Back in 2011, I was at work, and it got to that point where it was really, really ripping me apart. I divorced from Lynn. I was living on my own. So it was another step, actually. It was the first time I've lived on my own. So I decided to dress at night. So I dressed at night, still just going out at night, and I found places to go to, but only at night. When I started first, I looked like bloody Ozzy Osbourne in drag. But it's all trial and error, because you got no one to ask, no one to talk to about it. And that's how I started, just going out at night. And then it got to the point then where, after a while, I don't know why I did it. I think you're just pushing the boundaries. You want it to happen. You want people to find out. And yet, you're still, I was still scared to. So I think what I did then was to do it gradually at work. And I was wearing nail varnish to work. And the first time somebody said to me about it, I panicked. And I said, oh, one of the girls had a bet with me in the pub that I wouldn't wear nail varnish. It was an easy way out. Even then, it was still a panic. Because I've always been used to that. I was used to panicking and not being found out. And then it sort of led from that and went on through that. Then one day I decided to wear a wig to work. And everyone laughed and said, oh, is Cuffy having a bit of fun? But it wasn't really. It wasn't Cuffy having a bit of fun. It was Cuffy sort of getting into sort of living as a woman without anyone knowing. And after about a day and a half, I got asked to come. Nick Way. Nick said to me, "Can I have a word?" And he talked to me, and I said to him, "Well," and I did come out to him and said that I cross-dress, and he said, "Whatever you do outside of work, he says, up to you." He said, "I don't really care." He said, "But don't bring it to work." So I said to him, "Sorry, I'll do that," and I didn't. And then about a few weeks later, I was only coming out at night, and then I moved house down to where I am now. And one day I was out doing some gardening. I thought I need some plants, so I decided to go to a garden centre near Tiverton, and I don't know what made me do it. I came indoors. I put a skirt on, put my wig on, because at the time I didn't have my own. I had short hair. I put a wig on, put my makeup on, and up I went to Tiverton to do some shopping in a supermarket. I don't know why I did it. I was scared. I was absolutely shaking like a leaf, because it's the first time I've been out in daylight. And I went up there and I bought some plants, shaking like a leaf, scared to death, absolutely scared to death. So I bought some plants. I went back to the car. And then when I got back to the car, I was shaking so much that I couldn't drive. So I thought, I got to go back in for a cup of coffee in their little coffee shop. So I went in and sat down at this little table. It was quite funny actually. I sat down at this little table, little round table where the cups were upside down on the saucers. One of these old-fashioned sort of tea shops. And I'm holding the side of the coffee table, and with me shaking like a leaf, it was shaking the table, and the table was making one hell of a noise. And it was like a flag saying, "Everyone look at me." And everyone was, because they could hear this thundering great noise coming from the table. But in a couple of minutes, actually, this lady came over and put her hand on top of my hand as I was holding the table. And she said, "You okay?" I said, "Yeah." And she looked straight at me and she said, "Is it your first time out?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "Calm down." She said, "Just breathe." So and I just sat back. She said, "I'll get you a nice strong coffee." So she got me a coffee. She came back and sat beside me just for a few minutes, put her hand back on my top of my hand again. And she said, "I do understand." She said, "I used to be a psychiatric nurse, and I've retired now, but I'm just doing this as a little part-time job." She said, "You're doing okay." She said, "Just calm down." And that made me feel a lot better. It made me feel great. Not great as such, but it calmed me down.